Oh, okay. I like it when it just starts like out of nowhere.
Also, you do have some shit right here.
Do I?
Yeah.
I wonder what it
got
is. I just ate like a bowl of soup.
It was a big ass crumb.
For real?
Yeah, I was looking out. Yeah.
God damn. The other day I was interviewing this big ass white Crip, and he called me out for smelling my own armpit in the middle of the podcast.
It's important to know what you smell like.
That's what I'm saying. And I also I waited till he started talking, and I felt like the camera was going to be on him so that they wouldn't see me hitting it.
Yeah.
But then he called me out. So
when you're smelling your own armpit, like what are you looking for?
Stank, I guess. I was actually trying to determine if I had put on deodorant that morning, because sometimes I'm in such a cloud. Like, you get out of the shower, I have so many things I just thought about while I was in the shower, because this is one of the only times where you're like really alone with your thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I'll just forget about all of my showering duties.
Yeah. No, I've been about 2 years no deo.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought that it was working for me, and then my girl was like, "Yo, my friends say you fucking stink."
What? But she didn't notice?
No, because she's used to the pheromones. That kind of make you go nose blind after a long period of exposure.
Really?
I think so. I don't know.
I've had a lot of stinky friends over the years, really stank ass dudes, in the BMX world. I almost feel like it kind of draws stinky people.
Yeah.
And I've hung out with dudes who this basically defined their existence. That
Do you
they smell
tell
so
somebody
bad.
that, or is it a behind closed doors with the homies type of thing?
It's got to be one of the most uncomfortable conversations to have with somebody.
Yeah. That one, also telling someone they talk too much when they're on a roll, is really a tough one,
And
especially in the podcasting world.
That's why podcasting is difficult, because you kind of, at a certain point, if you're podcasting with somebody over and over, you want to talk to them about interrupting, you want to talk to them about talking too much or whatever, and it's very hard to shape that criticism in a way that doesn't alienate them and piss them off.
Especially if they're already passionately discussing a subject, and you're like, "Yo, that's a great idea," but you're talking way too much.
And that's my problem, is that if we are going to do a 2 or 3 hour podcast every week, I'm very inclined to tell you while we're doing the content.
Yeah.
But that typically does not play very well to the audience, unless it's so bad that every single person agrees with you.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the times, people go on these sort of self-obsessed, narcissistic rants about how sick they are.
Main character syndrome.
Those are always the ones that you have to cut off.
Yeah, and it's super difficult because they can't help but take it as, oh, he's disrespecting me, he's making it clear he doesn't give a fuck about me, etc.
Yeah.
But that's so many people, and I don't know if you've had this experience from doing the documentaries, but I get this from podcasting, is so many people are just the worst conversationalists ever. And it really kind of makes me not want to spark up conversations with random people from time to time, because I'm so aware of how much they're not listening, how much this isn't really a conversation. This is you just sort of projecting your neurosis onto me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the case for a lot of people that I've seen on this podcast. Rappers in general are hard to extract interviews from.
Right.
I sat Lefty down for an interview in a backyard in Baldwin Park 2.5 weeks ago, and it probably took 10 minutes before I got a coherent answer.
Right.
But the benefit of my platform is that I can cut out those first 10 minutes and just serve them only the platinum and diamond moments, whereas for you, the audience has to digest every single moment.
I know. And that's as time goes by, I feel like I'm almost creating the raw materials for future documentaries and video essays. Yeah. And it's kind of a failing on my part that I haven't figured out how the business can also create more cohesive versions of that content. Because I always look at your content and I'm I chose to live this life in which I basically do this endurance test form of podcasting where I do a lot of interviews. And then on yours, it's more you've created something where you're not incentivized by views as much as you are of having a really excited, loyal audience through the Patreon and shit. So it's for you are forming okay, how I guess you probably upload every week on average, right?
I've been trying to upload twice a week because I have 4 editors now. I used to do all the editing by myself. So
really?
Now I'm trying to do twice a week. But it's tough because you'll make a dope video and then some breaking story comes along and whatever you're working on is totally irrelevant. When I was covering the Aurora migrant gang takeover story, before I could even get the first draft done, it was Haitians eating cats in Springfield. And it was all right, nobody's talking about the shit I'm doing. So that incentivizes you to get stuff out faster, even if it's not perfect.
But you don't think that is an evergreen enough topic, or that you could have kind of maybe shaped it in such a way that it's still, because I don't feel like your audience is just hanging on for is he going to talk about the viral thing? Because that's something we deal with is if we do a podcast and we're not talking about the actual interesting current events, a lot of times it's kind of hard to imagine people clicking on it.
Yeah.
But I feel like your audience, it has such a level of faith with you that even if I don't give a fuck about the title, I'm probably clicking, which behooves you.
Well, there's like two kind of ways to look at it, because on one hand, you do kind of have to like follow what's hot, and you want to hit the algorithm to where you can be seen by new people. But I think the loyal base, like, they don't care if I publish something 3 weeks late. But when you're trying to actually get new people to watch something, they're going to naturally like be recommended to what's trending at the time.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, even like I watched the Lex Friedman interview the other day, and it was bizarre for me to remember that like it wasn't until about 2020 that you started to go hardcore with like the political angle and everything that was like real journalism and real news, because you've done such a good job over it for the last few years that it's difficult for me to remember that there was this period of time where you were focused on much lighter
it was
content.
like flat earth and furry conferences and conventions. And to be fair, the goal of this year is to like have Dear Kelly, the new movie, be a success, make enough revenue to buy All Gas No Breaks back for $1 million, which is currently priced at.
Wow.
And then make Channel 5 into a political kind of multinational news corporation, and then restart All Gas No Breaks, just no politics, just like American road trip.
Wow. So they want $1 million for what? Just the library of content and the channel itself?
The channels themselves, yeah.
Wow.
Because it was a pretty big like PR disaster for them whenever the All Gas dispute happened, the contract.
But they haven't done anything with that platform since, right?
No, they haven't. But like, I mean, their argument is that the company lost a lot of money as a result of PR damages from that.
Right. But I mean, they in retrospect can probably take a lot of the blame for that, or do they seem like they aren't?
Well, it kind of depends, because like I actually think the CEO of Doing Things, named Reed, the one who owned All Gas, he's actually a pretty good guy.
Okay, you don't hold a grudge against him.
No, I think he had some bad advice from investors and like other partners who told him like, dude, Andrew's just a glorified mic stand. He's replaceable. We're gonna find another comedy hotshot to take over the All Gas host role. And I think he was like, all right, sure. Why not?
In retrospect, do you in some way see some truth to that criticism? Because I feel like you've evolved so much as a content creator that maybe like your current self looks at your former self and was like, I can understand why they might have thought that, but then you sort of like bloomed into like a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I wasn't, but I knew that I would progress at some point, but I don't think it was necessarily evident to the naked eye that I was heading in like a gonzo journalism direction.
Right.
I also ran into this problem called the Borat effect, and basically, like, Jonah Hill taught me this, right? He used to work for Sacha Baron Cohen, and you know why there was 20 years between Borat 1 and Borat 2? Because after the success of the first movie, they tried to make a second one, and they would go into the field, and people would be like, "Oh my God, it's Borat, my wife." That was happening to me with All Gas No Breaks.
Right.
I'd go into the field in this brown suit, and people would like flock to the microphone like a magnet and be like, "I f***ed my cousin, butthole," like, and yell about their craziest trip story. And so the authenticity was already going away by the time All Gas was popping. So the rebrand wasn't just because I was tired of doing funny shit. It was becoming harder.
Had you always kind of had more ambition in terms of that content, like when you were doing that stuff? Because you still dip and dabble. Like, obviously, doing a video with Lefty Gunplay is not as like you know politically interesting to a big percentage of your audience. That's a little bit just more fun. But I'm assuming that you kind of wrap it around like bigger narratives.
Well, politics actually got pretty interesting in 2020.
Yeah,
it got crazy.
True.
I mean, not that it didn't matter before, but dude, COVID brought everybody inside, made everybody's lives tied with politics. The George Floyd protest was like my first kind of political coverage moment. And that was because like I had these formative experiences growing up in Seattle, losing friends to police brutality at a young age. So I was already kind of hardwired to like support those causes. So when that happened, I was like, I have to cover this. But like people always say, oh, you're so unbiased. That's definitely not true. Everybody's kind of coded by their formative experiences. Like if I was a small town kid from Iowa and my dad was the chief of police who was like rescuing cats from trees and putting out fires and helping people, I probably wouldn't feel that way when the George Floyd thing happened. But because I grew up the way I did, I just like felt naturally compelled to cover it that way.
Definitely. But I feel like you do try to avoid being clearly coded one way or another. And I feel like that's kind of useful towards you, but also like even in talking to you in private, I never get the idea that you're like super hardcore one way or another, which I feel like I feel the same way, but it's like it's so tempting for people to like label themselves. And obviously I would say that you probably tend to skew left, generally
I would say
speaking.
I definitely skew left.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like part of the problem and why the mainstream media failed is because these news outlets wouldn't tell you how they felt. Like CNN and Fox would both be like, we're objective, right down the middle. nobody's objective. So I think when journalists are more forthcoming with like their actual perspective, you get more like real information. Like when Tucker Carlson sat down with Vladimir Putin, extremely entertaining. But I know Tucker's right leaning, so I'm like watching it with that in mind. I feel like when people watch Channel 5, they know that I'm trying to be fair, but I'm generally like a little bit more left wing coded.
Right, definitely. I mean, it is kind of weird at a time like this though, where it's like, you know, okay, I just listened to a podcast on The Daily about RFK Jr. and Make America Healthy Again. And the whole thing really focuses on like a smear campaign against him, right or wrong, talking about every fucked up thing he ever said about vaccines, or, you know, how the 5G was giving us, you know, cancer or whatever, all this crazy stuff. And then I listened to the same thing, the same content on Barry Weiss's Honestly podcast, which my girl, you know, pleaded with me to listen to hear like another side of this. And the whole thing just emphasizes how bad nutrition is in America and how fucked up foods are, ultra processed foods, et cetera. And it's the same exact content. And both angles aren't really like lying. It's just they emphasize very, very different things. And it's like, I don't know, like even right there, it's like, if RFK Jr. and Trump managed to like make the food that the average American eat healthier, I mean, we're gonna just have to acknowledge that they've done something incredible. And I feel like listening to that and hearing all these doctors and all these parents who are super concerned about their kids' health and everything, it's like, oh, so there might be like extremely important changes in our society coming down the pipeline as a result of Trump's administration.
Yeah.
And it's going to be weird to see parents having to like see like, hey, I may not like Donald Trump as a person. I may not think that he has a great character, but he's done extremely important things here.
Dude, I tell people that too. Like, I may not be conservative, but if positive things start happening for the country, like if there's less poverty and people are healthier and the you know, the life expectancy goes up and education goes up, I'm gonna report that too. I'm not one of these people who's just like, you know, tirelessly trying to make Trump look bad at every turn.
Right.
If good things start happening, I'm not gonna cherry pick the 1 out of 100 who's having a bad time and be like, look, you see, everything's going to shit.
Right.
You're gonna see a lot of that, but like, I'm willing to acknowledge positive change whether there's a conservative or Democratic president.
It's been like so bizarre to see how in 2016 it felt like every young person had to be anti-Trump, and if they weren't, they had to kind of keep it close to their chest because this might be literally like the way that they lose their job or lose their position at their college or whatever. And now it feels like almost the opposite, where it's like nobody even wanted to admit that they were voting for Kamala for a while there.
Dude, I think it's like a couple things. Like 2020 created like the conservative counterculture, which is like we're gonna go outside, we're gonna have a party, we're not gonna wear a mask, like we're not gonna listen to the government. It didn't really exist before. It was like liberals and progressives who were like, f the government, f the police, and now it's like on its head, where you see like the system narrative is more like Democratic in the eyes of Trump voters. So it's kind of crazy.
No, definitely. I mean, like typically when somebody becomes president, their approval rating drops and we see them become less popular. So it's going to be interesting in 6 months what the opinion of Trump is once people realize that like their eggs aren't going to get any cheaper and gas prices probably won't be affected. But I don't know. We'll see.